I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my only daughter, Alba. Her tone sounded strange, almost detached, as she said, "Mom, we're flying to Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." Then she hung up. Just like that. 45 years of raising her, of giving everything for her, and she discarded me like something worthless. Yet I took a deep breath and smiled. Because there was something my dear daughter did not know. Mi nome és Carmen Valdés. I am 71 years old. And until that instant, I believed I truly knew my daughter. I had become a widow 6 months earlier. My husband, Raphael, had died of a heart attack while we were having breakfast. Exactly as we had done every morning for 45 years. That morning, he had poured my coffee with cream, prepared toast, kissed my forehead, and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his final words. Since then, Alba had been more present in my life, or so I thought. She came to see me 3 times a week. She helped me arrange the funeral and went with me to the grocery store. She even suggested I schedule a full medical checkup. "Mom, you have to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she would say, wearing that smile I once mistook for love, but now realized was convenience. The beach house had been our haven for many years. Raphael and I bought it when Alba was 15. Through hard work and sacrifice, every summer we went there, creating memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Alba would bring her boyfriends, and later her husband, Sergio. I would cook for everyone, clean, and do the laundry. It was our family tradition. Never did I imagine she would see it only as money. And the car. The old Ford pickup that Raphael cared for as if it were his own child. He would wash it every Sunday, change the oil faithfully, and always park it beneath the same shady tree. Alba knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last tangible piece of him I had left. His scent still lingered on the seats. When she hung up, I stayed seated on that uncomfortable green plastic chair surrounded by other patients. For the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something unfamiliar stirred inside me, a calm I hadn't felt since Raphael's death. In that very moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Raphael had given me a manila envelope. "Carmen, put this in the drawer of your dresser. If anything happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I had tucked it away without thinking much of it. After the funeral, overwhelmed by sorrow and endless formalities, I simply forgot. But it was still there, waiting for me at home. The nurse called my name, and I went into the office. The doctor examined me and told me I was in excellent health for my age, that I simply needed more rest and a better diet. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the frost in Alba's voice, and how Sergio was probably behind all of it. He had never liked me, always considered me a nuisance. I left the clinic and walked slowly toward the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Alba, yet as I waited, I couldn't help smiling. There was something almost poetic about the whole situation. My daughter believed she had left me with nothing. But what she didn't realize was that Raphael, my dear Raphael, had always been a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived, and I sat by the window, watching the city pass by the houses, the shops, people rushing everywhere, each carrying their own tragedies, their own secrets. And I was about to uncover them. When I arrived home, I went straight to my bedroom. I opened the dresser drawer, and there it was, the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel several documents inside. Raphael had written my name on the front in his neat handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. Dusk was falling, and the familiar shadows filled the room, shadows that no longer frightened me. I opened the envelope slowly, as though unwrapping a birthday gift. What I found inside would change everything. It literally took my breath away. Inside were legal papers, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Raphael. My eyes filled with tears as I read the words in his familiar handwriting. My dearest Carmen, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive. But I wanted to protect you from worry. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just own the beach house. We have 6 additional properties, including the apartment building where Alba and Sergio live. We also hold shares in 3 companies worth more than you can imagine. You are wealthy, my love. You always were rich in spirit. But now it's true on paper as well. My hands shook as I looked through the documents. There were deeds for houses in different neighborhoods of the city, a downtown condominium, a small coastal motel, and indeed the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. For the past 10 years, Raphael had been the silent owner, placing everything under the name of a company I'd never heard of. And according to the papers, I was the sole heir of that company. There were also bank statements from accounts I never knew existed, with figures that seemed unreal. Raphael had worked as a bus driver for 40 years. Yet apparently he had also been an exceptionally wise investor. Every penny we had saved, every sacrifice we made, he had quietly multiplied, and I had known nothing. In the letter, Raphael explained that he had kept it secret because he didn't want me to worry about finances or for Alba to discover our true situation. You know our daughter, Carmen. If she ever learned how much we truly have, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we possess. How ironic. I thought, our daughter had abandoned us believing we were penniless, when in fact, we had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, running my hands over the old furniture and trinkets that Alba had always mocked as outdated. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially the one of her at 5 years old, sitting on Raphael's lap and laughing. Where had that sweet little girl gone? When had she turned so cold? So calculating early the next morning, the phone rang again. It was Alba. Her voice was different this time, softer, but I had already learned to distrust those sudden changes in tone. Mom, how are you? I wanted to tell you we already transferred the money from the house and the car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you for a few months while you find somewhere smaller. My share, I asked, keeping my tone calm. Yes. Mom, we weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair. Right. We need the money for our investment in Europe. Sergio has an incredible business opportunity there. 30% of my own belongings. How generous. I see. And when do you leave? Dear. This afternoon. Our suitcases are already packed. We'll be away for at least 6 months, maybe longer if the business goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we come back, we'll help you find a small apartment. Something that fits your needs. Fits my needs. I repeated to myself, as though she knew what those needs were. All right. Alba, have a safe trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much. Then she hung up. I stood there, the phone still in my hand. For the first time in months, I laughed, really laughed. I hadn't laughed like that since Raphael died. The absurdity of it all was almost comic. My daughter had robbed me, thrown me out of my own home, spoken to me with unbearable condescension, all to finance a European adventure that would surely collapse. But what truly stung wasn't the money, it was how effortlessly she had erased me. 45 years of my life devoted to her, years of sacrifice and unconditional love, and she wiped me out with a 2-minute phone call. That was the real wound. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited an amount that probably looked generous to them. But to me it was a mockery. They had sold the beach house for far less than its worth, likely desperate for quick cash, and Raphael's truck for next to nothing. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Alba and Sergio load their luggage into a taxi. He carried 2 enormous suitcases. She held a sleek, expensive-looking carry-on bag. I watched them laugh, kiss, and make plans. They looked like 2 teenagers heading for an adventure. They never glanced toward my window, never said goodbye. When the cab drove off, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Raphael's papers spread out before me. I had decisions to make. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, and retrieve everything they had taken. But something inside me whispered that there was a better, more instructive way to handle this. I called Licenciado Martín Herrera, the lawyer who had managed Raphael's affairs. He had been present at the funeral, offered his condolences, and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Now, I finally did. Mrs. Valde, it's good to hear from you. How are you? I'm doing well. Mr. Herrera, I need to see you urgently. I found some documents of Raphael's that I don't fully understand. Of course, come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be here. That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. I dreamed of Raphael sitting in his favorite chair, reading the newspaper as he used to every morning. When he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time. My love, it's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke with a strange sensation, not happiness, but not the crushing sorrow I'd felt for months either. It was determination. For the first time since his death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to reclaim what was mine, but not in the way Alba expected. The next morning, I dressed with more care than usual. I put on my wine-colored dress, the one Raphael always said made me look elegant. I styled my hair, applied light makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in years, a strong woman. Lick. Martín Herrera's office was in the city center, an old yet elegant building with marble floors and large windows. He welcomed me warmly. But when I showed him the documents, his expression changed completely. "Mrs. Valde, this is far more than I imagined." Raphael was a very shrewd man. "Look, according to these papers, you are the owner of I know, Mr. Herrera." I interrupted softly. "I've already reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." He explained that everything was in perfect order, the documents legitimate, and that I was indeed the rightful owner of all those assets. He also confirmed what I had already suspected: the sale of the beach house had been illegal, since Alba had no right to sell it. "We can recover the house immediately, Mrs. Valde, and even take legal action against your daughter for fraud." "No, Mr. Herrera, I don't want legal action. I wish to proceed differently. I want everything kept secret for now. Can you help me?" He looked curious but nodded. "Of course. You are my client. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly retrieve the beach house, undo that fraudulent sale, and help me gain real control over all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives." "I understand. It will take a few weeks, but it's entirely possible." "Perfect. And, Mr. Herrera, I need no one to know I am behind any of this, at least for the moment." When I left his office, I felt as though I had awakened from a long sleep. I walked through the streets of Madrid, watching people hurry about their day as if nothing had changed. For me, everything had. I had a plan. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow abandoned by her daughter. In secret, I was a wealthy woman quietly reclaiming her fortune. Licenciado Herrera worked swiftly, calling every few days with updates on the legal procedures. I decided to remain in my home. It was mine, after all. Though Alba likely imagined I would move into a tiny rented room, each morning I ate breakfast at the same table where Rafael and I had shared so many years. Then walked through the neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with that blend of pity and curiosity reserved for new widows. Teresa, my lifelong neighbor, stopped by one afternoon while I was watering the front yard plants. Carmen, dear, is it true that Alba went off to Europe and left you all alone? Yes. Teresa, she left with Sergio. They have business plans there. And how are you going to manage? Sweetheart, we all know Rafael didn't leave much money. If you only knew. I thought, don't worry. Teresa, I'll be fine. Do you need anything I could bring some food? Help with the shopping. You're very kind. But truly, I'm all right. She gave me that expression I knew so well, the same one I'd seen after the funeral, sympathy laced with relief that it wasn't her misfortune. Well, you know where to find me if you need anything. That kind of conversation, repeated constantly, the butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store. Everyone spoke to me in that gentle tone reserved for the unlucky, and I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But deep inside, a part of me actually enjoyed the performance. It felt like living a double life. One Wednesday morning, Lick, Herrera called. Mrs. Valde, I have good news. I managed to annul the sale of the beach house. The buyers didn't know it was fraudulent, so they were reimbursed without issue. The house is yours again. Excellent. Mr. Herrera. And the building where Alba lives, that one's more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company. But we must make certain administrative adjustments to transfer full control to your name. That will take another 2 weeks. Perfect. Keep me updated. After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought of Alba. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard a single word, no calls, no messages, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got what she wanted. But I knew that would change soon. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast. Along the same route, Rafael and I had traveled hundreds of times. The house looked exactly as I remembered, small, cream-colored, with a porch overlooking the sea. The new occupants had placed a few potted plants on the steps, but otherwise everything was unchanged. I sat on the curb across the street and stared at it for an hour. Memories flooded back summer afternoons when Alba was little, running on the beach, building sandcastles, Rafael grilling fish outside while I prepared salads in the kitchen, Alba bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Sergio. All those happy moments she had reduced to a mere business transaction. An older gentleman stepped out of the house and noticed me sitting there. He approached politely. "Are you all right?" "Ma'am, yes. Thank you. I'm just reminiscing. I knew the previous owners." "Oh, really? What a shame about what happened. They told us the elderly lady was very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a bargain, but then we found out the sale wasn't legal. We had to give the house back." "Did you know them personally?" "No. Everything was through intermediaries. The daughter handled the paperwork because her mother supposedly couldn't." Such a sad situation. If only you knew how sad. I thought, well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes. Luckily, it all turned out fine, though now we have to find another house. We really liked this one. I left with a heavy heart. It wasn't only the money that hurt, it was the ease with which Alba had lied about me. She had fabricated a story about my illness, using my supposed frailty to justify her betrayal. To her, I wasn't a mother with feelings but an obstacle to be removed. That night, I called Lick. Herrera again. Mr. Herrera, I need your help with something else. I want to recover Rafael's truck as well. That will be more difficult. Mrs. Valde, the vehicle was in your name. But your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it. How could that be possible? Apparently, you signed that power of attorney a few months after your husband's death. Don't you remember? There it was the moment Alba had begun planning everything. I vaguely recalled signing some documents she had brought me, claiming they were to simplify the funeral and inheritance procedures. I had been so engulfed in grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. I understand. Mr. Herrera, is there any way to get it back we can try? But it will be complicated. We would need to demonstrate that you signed that authorization under deceit or coercion. Then let's do it. I intend to reclaim everything that was stolen from me. During the following weeks, my days fell into a peculiar rhythm. Each morning I played the role of the poor widow everyone pitied. I went out to buy bread, exchanged small talk with neighbors, smiled when they asked how I was coping, always careful to keep up appearances. But when afternoon arrived, my demeanor changed. I became a businesswoman. I spent hours poring over Rafael's documents, speaking on the phone with Licenciado Martín Herrera, and charting my next steps. I learned concepts about finance and property law I never imagined I would need at my age. The more I studied, the clearer it became that Rafael had been far more astute than I had ever realized. Each investment had been made with precision and forethought. The building where Alba and Sergio lived, for instance, was not only profitable for the rents it produced, it was located in a neighborhood whose value had multiplied rapidly in recent years. And then I discovered something that made my pulse quicken. Sergio carried enormous debts. He had taken out several loans using the apartment as collateral, oblivious to the fact that he was not the legitimate owner. Once the banks uncovered that truth, his situation would become dire. One Friday, Lick Herrera called with important news. Mrs. Valde, all the paperwork is finalized. You now hold total legal control over your properties. And I have some additional good news. Rafael's truck has been recovered. The man who bought it happened to be an acquaintance of mine. After I explained what happened, he agreed to return it for a modest compensation. You have done excellent work, Mr. Herrera, I replied calmly. There is something else I need. I continued. I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. He was silent for a long moment. Mrs. Valde, are you completely certain I am? I said. Muy voice steady. She decided that I no longer mattered in her life. Now she will discover just how much I do. I understand, he said softly. Should I mail it to Europe? No? I answered. Deliver it once she returns. And I have a feeling she will. Very soon. My intuition did not fail me. That very afternoon, Teresa, my neighbor and lifelong confidant, came rushing in with the latest gossip. Carmen, did you hear Sergio is in serious trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law works there. They're investigating several loans he took out, claiming the apartment as his collateral. But it turns out the place isn't even in his name. Truly, I asked, pretending to be surprised. Yes. And poor Alba knew nothing about it. They're saying she'll have to come back from Europe to sort things out. Can you imagine what a complicated mess? Indeed. And the worst part, apparently, Sergio lied about his business trip. There was never any project abroad. He only wanted to flee the debts he left behind. Perfect. I thought. Everything was unfolding exactly as Raphael had planned, and as I had quietly continued, Alba had chosen her husband over her own mother. Convinced by his charm and false promises, now she would face the reality of who he truly was. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, the evening air cool against my face. The stars glittered like silver dust across the Madrid sky. Raphael used to tell me that the stars were the souls of those who had lived full lives, watching over the loved ones they left behind. If he was right, then he must have been up there now, seeing everything unfold perfectly. "Thank you, my love," I murmured upward. "Thank you for protecting me, even after death." The next morning, the phone rang early. Mr. Herrera's voice carried a quiet excitement. "Mrs. Valde, your daughter has returned. She arrived this morning at the airport alone." "Alone," I repeated. "Yes. It seems Sergio stayed in Europe. There are rumors of a terrible fight." "I see. Did you send the letter? I'm doing so today. She should receive it tomorrow." I hung up slowly, my heart beating with a mix of anticipation and unease. After so many weeks of silence and patience, the first real step was about to take place. Alba was soon to learn that her mother was not the helpless victim she believed. 2 nights later, Teresa appeared at my door again, breathless as always. "Carmen, your daughter came back last night. I saw her with my own eyes. She had just 1 suitcase and looked dreadful, pale and exhausted, as if she'd cried all the way home. And you won't believe this, when the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. The superintendent had to open the door for her with the spare. So, Sergio had kept the keys. That could only mean one of 2 things. Either he had refused to return, or Alba had finally discovered what kind of man he was and fled. In either case, my daughter was back, and soon she would receive my small welcome present. That afternoon, Lick Herrera called once more. "Mrs. Valde, the notice has been delivered. The doorman confirms your daughter received it personally." "Excellent," I replied. "And how long did we give her? 30 days to vacate?" "As the law requires. But please, forgive me for asking again. Are you certain you want to proceed? She is your daughter, Mr. Herrera," I said evenly. My daughter expelled me from my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my things, treated me as worthless. Now she will learn that actions have consequences. "I understand," he said softly. "I only wanted to be sure you had considered every implication." "I have, Mr. Herrera. Every single one." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, picturing Alba's face as she read the letter, the initial confusion, the disbelief, the growing panic. She would probably assume it was a mistake or a cruel joke. But when she tried to verify, she would discover the painful truth. Everything was entirely legal. The following morning, right on cue, the phone rang. It was Alba, her voice trembling. Mom, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." "Good morning, dear," I answered, keeping my tone calm. "How was Europe, Mom?" "Please. I don't have time for that. I got a strange letter yesterday. It says I must leave my apartment in 30 days. It must be some kind of error. Do you know anything about it? An eviction notice. How odd. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. Wait. Let me check. Raphael Holdings. S.A. Have you ever heard of it? How poetic." I thought. Raphael had used his own name. "No, sweetheart. I don't think so. Are you sure it's authentic? That's what I'm trying to find out. Mom, I need your help. Sergio left me in Europe with nothing. He ran off with another woman, and now I come home to this. I don't understand any of it. There, it was confirmation. Sergio had abandoned her. Probably once the money was gone, or when he realized his legal troubles here were more severe than he could handle. Poor Alba, who had traded her family for a man made of lies. I'm sorry, darling. Where are you now at the apartment? Though I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come see you? I need someone to talk to. I have no one else. The irony couldn't have been sharper. Now that she had lost the man for whom she'd turned her back on me, she suddenly remembered she had a mother. Of course. Dear, I said warmly, come whenever you want. I'm on my way. I hung up and caught my reflection in the mirror. I had to look the part perfectly. I slipped into my most conservative gray dress, tied my hair into a simple bun, and practiced the expression of a worried yet forgiving mother. When Alba arrived, she would see exactly what she expected: a frail, heartbroken widow abandoned by her only daughter. An hour later, she knocked on my door. When I opened it, I barely recognized her. She had lost weight. Dark shadows framed her eyes, and her once elegant clothes were wrinkled and lifeless. Her eyes, red and swollen, darted away when she spoke. Mom, she whispered. For a moment, I thought she might embrace me, but she stopped herself, as if remembering how she had left me months ago. Come in, dear. Would you like some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen. At the same table where I had once read Raphael's letters, she looked small in her chair. Fragile. Almost childlike. Mom, I'm sorry for how I left, she said. I know I didn't treat you well. It's all in the past. Dear. No, it's not, she insisted. I was horrible to you. I said cruel things. And now, her voice cracked. Now I have no one. What happened with Sergio? He left me for a hotel waitress in Paris. She's 25. There was never any business deal in Europe. It was all a lie. He just wanted to run away from his debts and use the money from your house to fund his escape. All his debts. So many. Mom. He'd been borrowing for years, using our apartment as collateral, but now I find out he never owned it in the first place. Here was my chance. I see. Property matters can be complicated. Sweetheart, the problem is that now the banks are chasing me for his debts. They claim that because we were married, I'm equally responsible. And on top of that, this eviction letter. Mom, I don't know what to do. I have no money, no job, nowhere to go. She began to cry real, painful tears. For a moment, my heart softened. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would somehow work out. But then I remembered the sound of her voice that day. She called me from the doctor's waiting room, cold, detached, dismissive. The same voice that had erased me from her life. Did you speak with a lawyer about the letter? I can't afford one. We spent everything in Europe. Sergio took what little was left. So, what will you do? I don't know. I was hoping maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I find a job and can rent a small place. There it was. The question I had been waiting for. After selling my home, after throwing me away like rubbish, she now wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the helpless widow she had created to save her from the wreckage of her own choices. Of course. Dear, I said softly, this will always be your home. She stared at me, stunned, as if she hadn't expected forgiveness. Really? Mom, after everything that happened, you are my daughter. Alba, that will never change. She rose and finally hugged me, a desperate, clinging embrace from someone drowning. I held her, too, but not with the naive, unconditional love of the past. There was calculation now, quiet strategy behind my arms. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. "I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden. Don't think about that now. Rest, recover, and later we'll talk about your options." When she left to collect her things, I stayed in the kitchen, marveling at how easily it had all unfolded. She had returned exactly as I had foreseen, broken, desperate, and blind to the truth. To her, I was still the poor abandoned mother deserving of pity, but that was only stage one. Having her live with me would give me the perfect chance to begin the next phase. I would let her feel safe, comfortable, even grateful. And then, when she least expected it, she would learn the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Lick Herrera once more. "Mr. Herrera, I need you to take care of something else for me." "Of course." "Mrs. Valde, what do you need?" "I want you to investigate Sergio's debts, how much he owes, to whom, and what legal measures exist to separate those liabilities from my daughter. That will require time, but it's possible." "Good. And remember, this must remain strictly confidential. No one can know I'm behind it." "Understood. May I ask, what exactly do you intend to do?" "My plan, Mr. Herrera, is simple. I'm going to save my daughter, but first, she needs to understand what it truly means to reach the bottom." After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of Raphael's wine, the one he used to reserve for special occasions. It had been a long time since I had celebrated anything. That night, however, felt worthy. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, every card in my hand was the winning one. Alba moved into my home the very next day. She arrived carrying 2 suitcases and a single cardboard box, everything that remained of her once luxurious life. I stood silently by the doorway as she unpacked her belongings in her old bedroom, the same one she had used as a teenager. Every movement betrayed her humiliation, the way she folded her expensive, yet now lifeless clothes, the tremor in her hands as she placed them into drawers that still smelled faintly of her childhood perfume. She had fallen from the comfort of a high-end apartment to taking refuge once again in her mother's modest home. "Mom, I found this in the apartment," she said, holding up a manila envelope. It was with Sergio's papers. "It has your name written on it." My heart gave a jolt, though I kept my composure. "My name, how odd." "Yes. Look," she said, showing me the envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Raphael's, his firm, slightly slanted cursive. But this envelope wasn't like the one I had previously found in my dresser. This one was smaller, newer, as if written in his final months. "Maybe Sergio found it among Dad's things when he passed away and forgot to give it to you," Alba suggested. "That's possible," I replied carefully. "May I see it?" I opened it in her presence. Inside was a short letter and a small brass key. The letter read, "Carmen, if you are reading this after having received the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through difficult times. This key opens a safety deposit box at the Central Branch of the National Bank, number 247. Inside, you'll find something that might help you help her. Use it wisely. With eternal love, Raphael." Alba read the note over my shoulder. A safety deposit box. Dad had one. I had no idea. Neither did I. I lied smoothly. He never mentioned it to me. "Do you think we should go see what's inside?" "I don't know, dear," I answered slowly. "Perhaps it's best to let things be." "But, Mom," she insisted, Maybe there's something important documents, or something valuable that could help us. The desperation in her tone was undeniable. She was clinging to any thread of hope. On a possible salvation. I decided to let her cling just a little longer before revealing what was truly waiting for her. After a calculated pause, I said, "Very well. We'll go tomorrow." That evening, for the first time in many months, Alba and I shared dinner. She insisted on cooking, perhaps in an effort to contribute something, to feel less like a burden. The food tasted faintly of guilt and sorrow. Over the meal, she began to share details of what had happened during her time abroad. Each revelation was worse than the last. Sergio lied about everything. Mom, not just about the business. He lied about the debts, too. I thought he only owed a little, but he owes more than $100,000. And the worst part, he used my name for some of the loans without me knowing. My eyebrows lifted just slightly. How could that happen? He forged my signature, she confessed, her voice cracking. When we got married, I gave him some documents so he could handle our joint account. I never imagined he would use them to borrow money. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know? I don't think so. Everything is so complicated. The banks claim that because we were married, I'm equally responsible for his debts. And the divorce, I don't even know where he is, she said, shaking her head. He disappeared. His phone's disconnected. He doesn't answer messages or emails. It's like he vanished from the face of the earth. Perfect. I thought to myself. The coward had done me an unintentional favor. Now Alba was feeling the same pain I had once endured, the sting of betrayal from someone she had trusted blindly. "I'm so sorry, darling," I said softly. "I didn't know things had gotten so bad." "I didn't either," she admitted, tears welling again. "I really believed he loved me, that we were building a future together. But now I see I was just a way for him to get money, documents, and a ticket to freedom." She buried her face in her hands, crying with a depth of sorrow only complete disillusionment can bring. How could I have been so foolish? Why didn't I see who he really was? The temptation to tell her that I had seen it all from the beginning was strong. I could have reminded her of every warning, every doubt I had expressed, but that would have shattered the delicate image I had created, the image of the patient, compassionate mother. So I stayed quiet and murmured, "Love can be blinding sometimes. My dear, don't be too harsh on yourself." "But Mom," she continued, "I didn't just destroy my own life. I ruined yours too. I treated you terribly. I took your house, your truck, your things, and gave them to a man who abandoned me at the first opportunity. Now look at us, two poor women struggling to survive because of me. It's all behind us. Alba," I said gently, "we'll manage." She shook her head. "No. Mom, it's not behind us. You lost everything Dad left you. And I lost my marriage and my future. We're both paying for my mistakes." If only she knew. At that very moment, I was wealthier than she could possibly imagine. I owned the building she had once lived in. I could have solved her every problem with a single phone call. But the time wasn't right. Not yet. The next day, we went to the bank. Alba was nervous but hopeful. I kept up my act as the slightly confused widow who didn't fully grasp financial matters. The bank clerk led us through a long corridor lined with polished metal doors. He verified my identification and opened box number 247. Inside, under a small velvet cloth, lay jewels, many jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. The light of the overhead lamp caught the gems, scattering glimmers across the metal walls. I recognized some as family heirlooms from Raphael's side. Others were new, pieces I had never seen before. There was also a note inside, written in Raphael's steady handwriting. It listed each piece and its estimated value, with careful annotations about their origins. Alba gasped. "Mom, this must be worth a fortune." "You think so?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Yes. Look at this emerald necklace and these pearls. Dad saved a treasure here." According to Raphael's letter, the collection was worth roughly $200,000. It was a substantial amount, yet nothing compared to the entirety of my assets. To me, it was like finding a few coins under the sofa when you already have a fortune in the bank. "What should we do with all this?" "Mom," she asked, eyes wide with disbelief and hope. "I don't know, dear. They're family memories," I said carefully. "But Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling between shame and need. "We could sell some of the pieces." Her words trailed off. The thought of turning her father's legacy into cash, clearly paining her. Still, desperation glimmered behind her eyes. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, letting her feel the weight of her own dependence. I wanted her to understand what it meant to fall from arrogance to humility, from pride to pleading. She looked down at the jewels again, her reflection caught in the glass counter, no longer the self-assured woman who had once dismissed her mother, but someone fragile, learning for the first time what it means to lose everything. And as I watched her, I realized that my plan was working perfectly. With this money, you could reclaim the beach house, and I could settle some of Sergio's liabilities. There it was again, even faced with something precious. Alba's first instinct was to turn it into a solution for the damage Sergio had caused. She had not absorbed the lesson yet. "Are you truly willing to use your father's inheritance to pay Sergio's debts? What choice do I have?" "Mom, if I don't make a payment soon, the banks will begin foreclosing on everything that bears my name. And technically, nothing belongs to me. Everything was under Sergio's ownership. Think carefully." "Sweetheart, once these jewels are sold, they will be gone for good." "I understand," she whispered. "But what else can I do, with all these legal claims hanging over me? No one will hire me. Employers shy away from applicants buried under legal trouble. We brought the jewels home." Alba spread them across the kitchen table and examined each piece, sorting them into piles, weighing which ones she might part with and which to hold back. Watching decades of family history reduced to figures in a mental ledger felt like a small betrayal of memory. "Mom," she said one afternoon, counting through imagined proceeds, as if tallying cash on our table. "I think I can get about $180,000 for everything." She exhaled. "It is less than I hoped, but enough to address the most pressing bills. Are you certain you want to proceed? I do not see another path. If I wait, they will seize it all. Even this house could be dragged into it if anyone claims I have some legal connection to the properties." The irony was almost unbearable. Alba feared losing a house that belonged to me, while planning to pay the obligations of a man who had abandoned her using jewels left by the same man who had built the fortune that could quietly rescue her. "And how will you choose which debts to tackle first?" "I spoke with a free advisor at the bank," she replied. "She said to prioritize anything backed by real collateral. Those are the ones that can cost property or trigger a swift foreclosure." In only a few weeks, Alba had changed noticeably. The daughter who once sold my belongings without asking now researched each choice with care. Suffering had made her more responsible, though also more delicate. That evening, while she arranged statements and notices across the table, "Licenciado Martín Herrera telephoned. Mrs. Valde. I have a complete report on Sergio's liabilities. The situation is worse than I anticipated." "How much worse?" "He owes more than $200,000 to multiple banks and also to private lenders. Even more troubling, several loans appear to rely on forged documentation bearing your daughter's signature. That potentially makes Alba liable. Is there a way to shield her? It is complicated. If we can prove she had no knowledge, we may be able to free her from some of the obligations. But the process would be lengthy and costly. How costly for a specialist, for a capable attorney in this niche? Around $50,000. With no guarantee of success. I understand. And if she simply paid the balances, that would be the fastest resolution if she had access to that kind of money. Which seems unlikely. Mr. Herrera, I said, prepare every document required to extricate my daughter from these debts, but do not tell her. You intend to cover this, Mrs. Valdez. I will do whatever it takes to protect my child. But it must be done in a very precise manner. When I ended the call, I found Alba gazing at the jewels with a mournful look, like a child who had shattered a beloved toy and had no idea how to mend it. What are you thinking? Darling, about Dad, she murmured, about how disappointed he would be in me. Seeing the life I chose, your father adored you. Alba, he would try to understand. No. Mom. He raised me to be responsible, to honor family, not to be selfish. I did the opposite. I turned my back on you for a liar. I traded our memories for money. I destroyed what he built. For the first time since her return, her remorse sounded real, not just regret for the consequences, but recognition that she had done something deeply wrong. People make mistakes. Sweetheart, the important part is what we learn from them. How do I learn from this? She asked. How do I repair what I've done? This was the question I had waited to hear. Alba was finally ready to look at her actions and accept their consequences. Still, it was not yet the moment to reveal my final move. First, she needed to reach the very bottom. In the days that followed, crucial to my plan, Alba decided to part with most of the jewelry, keeping only the engagement ring Raphael had given me and a delicate necklace from her grandmother. I watched her map out visits to jewelers, research offers, and negotiate with buyers. Witnessing her convert generations of history into transactions was painful, but it taught her the true cost of her choices. Mom, I managed to get $180,000, she announced one afternoon. Imagining the counted bills upon our table. It's less than I hoped, but it will handle the most urgent debts. Are you certain this is what you want? I don't have the luxury of options. If I delay, they will take everything. Even this house might be vulnerable. If anyone finds a legal thread tying me to the properties. Again, the bitter irony. She feared losing a home. That was mine. Seeking to rescue herself with money from jewels tied to the very man who had created the wealth that could save her. And how will you prioritize the payments? I asked the free advisor at the bank. She said. She told me to focus on obligations with tangible collateral. Those can cost you property or trigger immediate foreclosure. In those few weeks, Alba had indeed matured. The woman who once disposed of my things without a word was now scrutinizing every step. Pain had grown her sense of responsibility, even as it left her more fragile. That night, while she sorted documents into neat piles, Martina Herrera called again. Mrs. Valde. Important news. We have located Sergio. We're in Paris, just as your daughter suspected. And here is the interesting part: he is attempting to obtain French residency through a sham marriage with the young woman Alba mentioned. A sham marriage? Yes. She seeks papers. He wants a way to avoid deportation. Most importantly, we uncovered evidence that he deliberately falsified your daughter's documents with the intention of fleeing. That means Alba can be cleared of the debts with this proof. Yes. We can establish fraud and coercion. Your daughter should not have to shoulder any liability for what Sergio did behind her back. Perfect. Now, I possessed a legal route to free Alba from the entire burden without her suspecting that I had the resources to do so outright. Mr. Herrera, begin the legal process at once. Do not say a word to my daughter yet. I want everything finished before I tell her. I will not offer hope until there is certainty. Understood. It should take about 3 weeks, perhaps a month. When I set down the phone, Alba studied my face. Who was that? Mom, a woman asking for Miss Diaz at the corner. I said mildly, wrong number. Lying had grown easier. With each passing day, I became more accustomed to this double existence to Alba, a bereft mother with nothing. In truth, a wealthy woman quietly orchestrating my daughter's rescue and her education. Across the next 2 weeks, I watched Alba wrestle with choices she had never faced: how to stretch a grocery budget, how to negotiate with collectors, how to look for employment when your credit is in ruins. It was cruel in the short term, but it was necessary. Mom, I went to 3 interviews today, she told me one evening. Feet swollen and face worn. 2 of them said they can't hire me with these pending legal issues. The third offered a part-time cleaning job at night. Will you accept it? I don't see another option. The pay is small, but it's something. If I work nights, I can keep searching for better opportunities during the day. To see my daughter, who had lived comfortably for more than 40 years, preparing to scrub offices at night, broke my heart. At the same time, stirred a quiet pride. She was finally facing life without expecting to be rescued. Are you sure you can handle physical work? I will learn, she answered. I can't continue being a burden. Mom, you already let me stay here without paying. This is your home. Alba. No. Mom, she said gently, it's your home. And I am here because you are generous. I won't take advantage forever. On the first evening of her new job, while Alba was away cleaning, Teresa stopped by. We sat in the kitchen, sipping tea under the gaze of family photographs. Carmen, I need to ask you something, she said quietly. Did you know Alba would return in these circumstances? What do you mean? When she left, she was so sure of herself, so confident. She talked about the grand life in Europe, about Sergio's success. Now she is back, undone, cleaning offices, and living with you again. Life has a way of turning. I replied, yes, but there is more. I have watched her lately. She seems changed. Not only sad, but humble. As if something important has shifted inside. Teresa had always read people well. What do you think she learned? The value of what she took for granted. Teresa said, like having a mother who loves her without conditions? Perhaps. I said, and then asked softly, tell me honestly, do you think I am doing the right thing? I think you are doing what a good mother does. But I also think Alba needs to grasp fully what she lost when she turned her back on you. What exactly she must value you not only as the woman who rescues her when she stumbles, but as the strong person who built a steady life over 45 years. She must respect you, not merely need you. Teresa had put words to the very heart of my plan. I did not want Alba to return because she had nowhere else to go. I wanted her to return out of respect and mature love. How do you think that happens? I asked. I believe it is happening already. Teresa said, listen to her tone with you. Now it is different. She no longer treats you like a burden or gives orders. She is grateful. She knows what you are. That night, when Alba came home from work, I saw a new steadiness in her. Tired. Yes, but dignified. Those few dollars had been earned by her own hands. And that mattered. How was your first night? Hard, she said, but not as terrible as I feared. The other women were kind. One of them, Mrs. Johnson. Taught me faster ways to scrub and dust? Mrs. Johnson, yes. She is 60 and has cleaned offices for 20 years. She started after her husband left her with 3 small children. She said it was not the job of her dreams, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds wise. She is. She told me people who end up in this work usually fall into 2 groups: those who never had opportunities and those who squandered the ones they had. She asked me which I was. And what did you say? I told her the truth, that I had all the chances in the world, a loving family, a stable home, an inheritance, and I threw them away for a worthless man. And what did she reply? She laughed and said, "Well, dear, at least you know exactly why you are here. That already puts you a step ahead of many." Alba poured a glass of water and sat beside me. "Mom, I want you to know something. These last weeks have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important." "Why is that?" "Darling, because I finally understand what truly matters. It is not money. It is not a luxury apartment. It is not impressing anyone. It is having people who genuinely love you, people who remain when everything else collapses." "Alba, no. Let me finish," she said gently. "You would be justified in hating me. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took what Dad left. I treated you like a nuisance. And now I am here again, hoping you will forgive me and care for me. I forgave you long ago." I said, "I have not forgiven myself," she answered. "And I will not until I prove I have changed, until I show I learned from my mistakes." The next morning, Lick. Martín Herrera called with the news I had been waiting for. "Mrs. Valdez, the legal process is nearly concluded. We can free your daughter from all of Sergio's obligations." It was time. After weeks of watching Alba work, struggle, and reckon with her choices, I could finally show her that she had never been alone, that someone had been guarding her future the entire time. "Mr. Herrera, arrange a meeting. My daughter deserves to hear the truth." He set the appointment for Friday morning at his office. I explained to Alba only that we would see a lawyer who might help with her legal problems. She agreed to go, though anxiety flickered across her face. "Mom, I have no money for a consultation," she said. "I barely cover the basics. Do not worry about the fee." I told her, "Let us listen to what he proposes." We arrived punctually. Alba wore her best outfit, now a bit loose on her thinner frame. She sat wringing her hands, bracing for yet another blow. Lick. Herrera greeted us with professional warmth. "Mrs. Valdez, Ms. Valdez, thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing us." Alba replied, "But I should warn you, my finances are complicated. I doubt I can afford high fees." "That is precisely what we will discuss," he said, trading a knowing glance with me. "But first, please review these documents." He handed Alba a thick folder. As she read, her expression shifted from puzzlement to surprise. "I do not understand," she said slowly. "These papers say Sergio forged my signature. They show evidence of fraud. They state I am not responsible for the debts." "That is correct." Lick. Herrera said, "We have been investigating for several weeks and gathered sufficient proof that you were the victim of identity fraud." "But how is this possible? Who paid for this investigation?" "I have no money." Lick. Herrera looked at me. It was my cue. "Alba, there is something I must tell you," I said. "What is it?" "Mom," I drew a breath. After weeks of performance, the moment of truth had arrived. Your father left me far more than you ever knew. Much more. "Mr. Herrera," I said. "Show her the other documents." He produced a second folder. Inside, lay property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, the whole secret legacy Raphael had built. Alba read silently for several minutes, her face moving through confusion, disbelief, shock, and at last, comprehension. Mom, this says you own the building where I lived. Yes. And that you hold other properties? Accounts. Investments. Yes. So when I sold the beach house, I sold your house. The sale was fraudulent. I already reversed it. I answered. She stared at the pages, trying to absorb the impossible. How long have you known? Since the day you called me from the doctor's office. You knew all of this when I came back from Europe begging for help. Yes. You knew you could fix everything when you saw me crying each night? Yes. A heavy silence stretched between us. Alba closed both folders and lifted her eyes to mine. Why? Mom, why did you let me suffer when you could have helped? This was the question I had rehearsed answering for weeks. Because there was something you needed to learn, something you could not learn any other way. What was that? The value of what you had discarded: family, respect, responsibility. When you walked away, you did not take only money. You took dignity, love, trust. Alba began to cry, but not the self-pitying tears I had seen in recent weeks. These were different, born of understanding rather than fear. They were tears born of profound comprehension. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like refuse. Yes. And still you rescued me. Yes. I answered softly. But not in the way you expected. I did not save you by handing over money so you could repeat the same mistakes. I saved you by allowing you to strike the bottom so you could learn how to pull yourself up. Licenciado Martin Herrera cleared his throat and spoke with tact. Ms. Valde, your mother has covered every legal cost necessary to free you from Sergio's liabilities. She has also reversed the fraudulent transfers and recovered the properties. You are, at this moment, fully clear of legal entanglements. And the night job I took, Alba began. You may quit if you wish. I said, but I hope you will not. Why? Because that work is teaching you something comfort never did: the worth of your own effort, the dignity of honest labor, the necessity of valuing every single coin you earn. Alba dabbed her cheeks and looked at me with an expression I had not seen in years. It was no longer the gaze of a child clinging to her mother, but of one grown woman recognizing another. Do you forgive me? Mom, I forgave you long ago. Sweetheart, the question is whether you can forgive yourself. I do not know that I can. I did things that feel unforgivable. People fail. Alba, what matters is what we choose to do after we face our failures. Lick. Herrera stepped out and left us alone for a few minutes. We sat in quiet, letting the day's revelations settle around us. Mom, she said at last, there is something I want you to understand. Even if you had possessed nothing, even if you truly were the destitute widow I believed you to be, I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson is that? That nothing is more precious than having someone who loves you without conditions. These past few weeks, the only thread that held me together was knowing I had a home with you, knowing that no matter how much I ruined, you remained my mother. That will never change. Alba, I know. But I also know I can never take that love for granted again. I must earn it day by day with respect, with gratitude, with actions rather than words. We left Lick, Herrera's office, with a relationship remade. We were no longer merely mother and daughter bound by blood and habit. We were two adult women who had chosen each other after enduring the hardest test either of us could imagine. The weeks that followed were dedicated to rebuilding, though not in the way Alba once pictured. Even after discovering that I had the resources to erase every obstacle, she chose to keep the night cleaning job. Mom, I need to finish what I began. she told me one afternoon as she buttoned her uniform. I cannot slip back into comfort as though nothing happened. Are you sure you do not have to punish yourself forever? It is not punishment. It is how I remember who I was and who I intend to be. I watched her knot her hair and straighten the plain blouse unthinkable attire only a few months earlier, when she was living in a luxury apartment with Sergio. Yet something in her posture had changed. She was no longer the shattered woman who had once arrived at my door in tears. She had discovered dignity inside work. Teresa dropped by that afternoon, just as she had every few days since Alba's return. Carmen, the neighborhood is buzzing with odd rumors. What sort of rumors? People say you are not as poor as everyone believed. Someone saw Alba leaving a very elegant law office in the center. And later, someone else watched her paying off all her accounts at the bank. People like to talk. Teresa. Yes. But they also say you reclaimed the beach house and that you somehow solved all of Alba's legal issues. That requires a great deal of money. Carmen. She knew me too well to be misled for long. What precisely do you want to know? I want to know whether my friend of 40 years has been hiding the truth about her circumstances. I poured tea and took the chair opposite hers. It was time to be honest with at least one other person. Raphael left me more than anyone realized. Teresa. Much more. How much more? Enough that Alba and I need never worry about money again. She sat in thoughtful silence. And why pretend to be poor all these months? Because Alba needed to learn something that could not be learned any other way. I told her everything. Alba's cruel call. My quiet plan for justice. The weeks of letting my daughter reach the bottom. And finally the unveiling at Herrera's office. Carmen. That is both brilliant and terrible. Teresa said at last. Terrible. You let your own child suffer when you could have helped. Yes. And yet, brilliant, she continued. Because I understand your reason, Alba needed to grasp the value of what she had thrown away. If you had simply paid her bills, she would have learned only that someone would always rescue her from the results of her choices. Exactly. Did it not wound you to watch her suffer every day? Every night I heard her crying. Every morning I saw her leave for work, spent and discouraged. But I knew that if I rushed to lift her too soon, she would not learn the whole lesson. And do you believe she has learned it? Look around you, I said with a small smile. She knows she could live comfortably now. And she still chooses to keep her job. She could move into a nicer place. And she decides to stay with me. She no longer fears the debts. And yet she uses her savings to help other women in similar grief. She is helping others, yes. She befriended the women on her crew and has been using part of her wages to help a co-worker cover her son's daycare. Teresa smiled. That is not the same Alba who flew to Europe. No, it is not. This Alba understands that money is a tool, not a destination. She knows that dignity springs from labor and respect, not from possessions. That night, when Alba returned, she found me reading in the living room. Mom, I have to tell you something, she said, lowering herself onto the sofa. Today, Mrs. Johnson asked whether I was the daughter of the wealthy lady from the north side. What did you say? I told her. Yes, that you have enough for me not to work. And what did she ask next? She asked why I was working anyway. I told her I had to prove to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet. And what did she say to that? She laughed and said, Dear, that is the difference between being rich and pretending to be rich. Your mother taught you what real wealth looks like. Mrs. Johnson is wise. I said, She is. Alba agreed. She helped me understand something crucial. It is not the sum you possess that matters, but how you use it and the relationship you have with it. She drew a breath. Mom, I have made a decision. I am going to keep living here, but not as a daughter who ran home to her mother. I want to stay as an adult, who chooses to share her life with you. What is the difference? Sweetheart, the difference is that I will pay my share of the expenses. I will contribute to the upkeep of the house. I will treat this as a partnership between two independent women who love and respect one another. Alba, you do not need to. Yes, I do. I need our relationship to be different from before. I used to take your love and care for granted. Now I want to honor the most important bond in my life. And your job, I will keep working. Although perhaps not cleaning forever. I want to go back to school. I want to prepare for work that has meaning. I will do it step by step, earning every chance. Do you know what you want to study? Yes? Social work. These weeks have shown me how many people struggle without anyone to support them. I want to use what we have to help women who are living what I lived. It was perfect. She had not only learned to value what she had found a way to transform her experience into purpose. And Sergio Lick Herrera said he was arrested in France for the sham marriage. He will be deported soon. But honestly, Mom, I no longer care. That chapter is over. No resentment, none. Sergio did me a favor without meaning to. If he had not abandoned and betrayed me, I would never have reached the bottom. And without the bottom, I would never have learned how to cherish what matters. That night, for the first time in months, I slept in complete peace. My plan had worked. Alba had absorbed every lesson she needed and had emerged stronger. Wiser and gentler. Raphael would have been proud. 6 months later, our lives settled into a balance neither of us could have imagined. Alba completed her studies in social work with excellent marks. And I set aside part of my resources to found an initiative supporting women facing domestic violence and financial abandonment. Mom, the letter from the university arrived. Alba said one morning, stepping into the kitchen with an envelope. I was admitted to the master's program. I start next term. That is wonderful. We can easily cover it. I want you to know I will pay with my own savings. I have been setting aside part of my city job paycheck. It is not a large salary. But you have learned to live with the essentials and to value each coin. I finished for her. Yes. And I need to do this myself. It is part of who I am now. That afternoon, Teresa came by. As she had nearly every Friday, she had witnessed our transformation with a mixture of wonder and affection. Carmen, I have a confession, she said, pouring a second cup of tea. At first, I thought you were terribly cruel to Alba. And what do you think now? Now I think you are the wisest mother I know. Look at your daughter, truly look. It was true. The Alba bent over textbooks in the living room was nothing like the woman who had flown to Europe months earlier. This Alba carried a quiet calm from the inside out. A steady confidence born of her own work and not of showy possessions. Did you know? Teresa added. I saw Alba at the market buying vegetables for a family she helps through her job. She did not mention it. When I asked why she used her own money instead of a government stipend, she said some things cannot be measured in official ledgers. That evening, Alba and I ate on the porch, a habit we had grown to love. It was our time to talk about the day, make plans, and simply sit together. Mom, I received a strange letter, she said, cutting into her salad. From whom? From Sergio. I felt my shoulders tense. Yes. From a prison in France. Apparently. He was sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. He says he regrets everything and wants my forgiveness. And how do you feel, honestly? Nothing. No anger. No sorrow. No thirst for revenge. It is as though that life belonged to a different person. Will you respond no? Not out of hatred. There is simply nothing left to say. The Alba who married him no longer exists. This Alba has nothing to discuss with him. Her voice held a new steadiness. The woman across from me had grown an inner strength that only comes from falling hard and rising on your own. Do you know what this journey taught me? Mom, what did it teach you that real love does not merely tell you what you wish to hear? Real love teaches you what you must learn even when it hurts. Sergio told me pretty stories. He made me feel special. He promised a life of luxury without effort. You taught me that true wealth is built upon work, respect, and sincere relationships. Later, after Alba went to study, I sat alone beneath the stars and thought about Raphael. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter. At last, I felt I had done so in the way that mattered. I had not cared for her by handing her money on demand. I had cared for her by teaching her to care for herself. I had not saved her by fixing her problems. I had saved her by allowing her to learn how to fix them. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned our first visit to the beach house since reclaiming it. Alba had resisted earlier, insisting she needed time to face what she had done. Ready? I asked as we climbed into the truck. I think so. We drove mostly in silence. Accompagnable quiet. When we arrived, Alba lingered beside the vehicle, staring at the place where we had passed so many summers. It looks exactly the same, she said at last. Some things do not change, I answered. But others do. You are not the same person who sold it. We stepped inside together. The rooms were neat and bright. Just as Raphael and I had kept them, Alba wandered slowly through each space, letting her fingers drift across familiar furniture, pausing at the framed photographs lining the walls. Mom, she said, turning back to me, I want to apologize. You have already apologized. Sweetheart, no. This is for the house specifically. Not only for selling it, but for shrinking a lifetime of memories into a mere transaction. It is forgiven. This house holds more than 40 years of summers, birthdays, and Christmases. Dad built that porch with his own hands. You were the one who planted that garden. I learned to swim on that stretch of shore, and I converted all of it into cash to bankroll the escapade of a man who was worth nothing. She lowered herself onto the sofa where Raphael used to sit with the paper on Sunday mornings. Do you know what wounds me most? What is it that when I sold it, I felt nothing. It was just another asset. Standing here again, I can sense Dad in every corner, she whispered. I can almost hear his laugh, smell his morning coffee, see his reading glasses resting on the table. He is here, Alba. He has never truly left. I know, she said. And I also know he would be proud of the way you handled everything. We spent the entire day in the house, cooking side by side, tidying, mending small things. It felt like a ceremony of reconnection, not only with the place itself, but with the values it had always held. As the sun slid toward the horizon, we settled on the porch Raphael had built and watched the ocean breathe. Mom, I want to propose something. What is on your mind? Let us turn this house into a short-term refuge for women leaving violent homes, a place to land while they rebuild. It was a flawless idea. Raphael would have adored knowing that his beach cottage would shelter other families. I think it is beautiful. Sweetheart, we can use part of the foundation's budget to keep it running, and I can oversee the program through my work. Are you certain you want to transform our family sanctuary into that? Mom, the best sanctuaries are the ones we share, I said. Your father always believed a house is not truly a home until it opens its doors to people who need love. He had lived that belief, welcoming relatives, friends, and neighbors whenever they needed a bed. We drove back that night, carrying a new mission and a relationship renewed from the roots. We were no longer a mother and daughter bound only by obligation or by need. We were two women who had deliberately chosen to build a life together on love, respect, and a common purpose. Before sleep, I spoke to Raphael in the quiet. We did it. My love, our daughter has finally grasped what truly matters. And for the first time since he passed, I felt an answer. I always knew you would. You are both stronger than you realize. What arrived was not vengeance, but education. Not punishment, but transformation. In the end, we gained something far more precious than money. An honest relationship laid on bedrock, one no future storm could shatter. Did the tale speak to you, and from which city are you listening? Tell me below so we can meet in the comments. If the story moved you, you can offer a super thanks to help me keep bringing more. Thank you deeply for your kindness. I am eager to read your thoughts. On the screen, you can find 2 new life stories. I highly recommend. There is so much more on my channel. Remember to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.